right. Well, good afternoon. It looks like we've got a nice little group watching today. So thanks for making some time. As Allie said, I'm Sherry Allison. I'm one of the partners here at Anderson Elder Law. We are a law firm based in Media, Pennsylvania, with offices also in Westchester. Um, and so what we're going to talk today is about making sense of senior living and what you need to know. And that's kind of what we do here every day is helping families figure out what the right pathway is for them as they consider the options for aging successfully. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we want for all of our clients is despite whatever curveballs life has thrown at you, that you're aging as successfully as possible under the circumstances. So I'm going to hope that my slides transition today. Yay. We're a planning-based firm. So if you look at any of our materials, it's, estate planning, life care planning, special needs planning, planning. Well, why is that so important? Um, the biggest thing that I've seen is that when you wait for a crisis to hit, met with a lady yesterday and she said, well, I think I'll just wait until the balloon pops. And that's certainly a natural and normal way to think about handling problems, right? Let's just wait until everything goes to heck. But what we find in reality is that it really limits your choices if you wait too long. And we'll get into this a little bit through the talk, things like, well, if you want to go to a continuing care retirement community, for example, you not only need to have uh, finances, you also need to be healthy. So sometimes if you wait too long, you might actually lose the option to go to one of those communities. So, proactive planning, that involves looking at your estate planning documents, is a really critical part of that. Most people that come to me haven't looked at their planning in a while, right? It might have been done many, many years ago when your kids were little, and things have changed drastically since then. We also want to look at your insurance coverage. Like, what is your long-term care insurance? Do you even have any? Medicare coverage, supplemental coverage. Maybe you're on a Medicaid program. Maybe you're on a home and community-based waiver. All of those things, we need to understand how those impact the care choices that you're going to make. And then the life care planning really combines all of that together so that we look at the plan of care that somebody wants to be able to age successfully or get the support that they need if they haven't aged successfully, right? They need to go to a nursing home. And how do we align the estate planning and the assets and the Medicaid planning to support those things? So really, bottom line, getting this stuff early, not waiting, is really a benefit, to you. There's no one size fits all when it comes to senior living options, and what's right for you might not be what's right for somebody else. So I certainly have clients that look at places where they have friends, right? And they go, I don't know, that's not the right fit for me, and that's okay. Not everything is for everybody. So just like, you got to test drive a car, you got to test drive a community, you got to take tours, you got to find what ones you like and things like that. And part of our life care planning here at the firm is we help with people make those decisions, help them understand what questions to ask, help them review the contracts, and work with the business offices of communities and things like that, so that when you do find your match, that we make sure that it can be a successful transition from home to the community. So we're going to look at the different types of options along the continuum of care. And this is one of my favorite slides that we share with clients on the elder care continuum. Most people I work with are pretty visual learners, right? So this kind of gives you at a glance an understanding of where you're on that top line. What are the functional limitations, if any, of an older adult? What is the setting that aligns with each type of function? And what's the cost on the next line, and what public benefits are available? So, when we look at independent living options, right, there's Generally, no additional care costs that are needed because you don't need care, but you should still have your insurance coverages in place, Medicare, and then taking advantage of the time that we're in now, which is open enrollment time. So even if you're not needing any care now, you want to make sure that the coverages that you have, particularly if you have a Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage plan, are going to meet you where you're at should you get sick. And again, now's a great time to do that. And we have lots of information on our website about open enrollment and tools for you to use. So I'll just leave that there. Limited function, but we'll look at home with assistance. And there really isn't a lot of private money, it's public money for that. The idea is that you pay for that out of pocket. There is some opportunity, like we see there, it says some, if you're coming home from a hospitalization or a rehabilitation stay, that you can get a limited Medicare home benefit for that. But generally, if you just need help at home with your activities of daily living, things like bathing, dressing, continence care, feeding yourself, things like that, that's when you need some additional help from a non-medical home care agency. So you can see in this chart, again, the reason I like it so much is that there are options short of where you get to the nursing home, right? So we have home on the one end and nursing home on the other. What everybody's worried about is that they end up in the nursing home, right? Because we see all those dollar signs that are below the nursing home line. But if we're doing life care planning correctly and care planning correctly, we're hoping that our clients can plan early and take advantage of those other care settings that are less restrictive and more home-like before we even have to worry about getting to a nursing home stay. And we're going to look at each of the different options as we go through the presentation. So we have home and community-based services, also kind of known as aging in place. And we can do in-home services. Respite care is a great one. You can live at home, but maybe you can go to a day program that gives your caregiver a little bit of a break during the day. You can get Meals on Wheels, home modifications. Most of these are offered through the area agency on aging in your county. In Delaware County, that our area agency on aging is COSA. Most people have heard of that. And you can call them even if you're not a limited means and find out what might be available to you. As you need more assistance though with bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring from bed to a chair, medication management potentially, you're looking at getting a home health aide in. And those costs can really add up. It's $28 to $35 an hour on average. Right. So if we think about a company that maybe has a 3 or 4 hour minimum per day, doing that 7 days a week, you can see how that really can add up. And even adult day programs can range from $75 to $150 a day. So really understanding the cost of these things is a way of getting prepared and thinking about what makes sense. A lot of families think they want to have someone stay at home, right, forever because it's cheaper, but not necessarily. If the care needs are verging on 24/7 to keep somebody at home, that can be twice as much, if not 3 times as much as a nursing home. So it's really just important to understand the economics of it and to understand that you might want to think about providing the care yourself as a family caregiver, and that's free, but it really isn't, because when we think about the toll and the stress that family caregiving takes, that cost is not measurable in dollars, but it really can be if we have family members that have to leave the workforce to provide care, right? Have their own medical issues now because of the care that they have to provide. So it's really something to be thoughtful of before you think that you're just going to roll up your sleeves and take care of somebody at home because that's the cheapest option. That said, there are some funding sources, available from the government. And the one the couple that I want to touch on is Medicaid home and community-based waiver. And this is for people that are really low income and low assets. So your income can't be above $2,901, then that's the 2025 number, and that's your gross income. So it's not what goes into your bank account net of any withdrawals or withholding for insurance. So a lot of people don't qualify because the income limits are quite low, and you can have no more than $8,000 in countable resources. And so it's important to know that a home and a car don't count for qualifying for Medicaid home and community-based waiver services. But it's very hard as a single person, particularly in Delaware County where the taxes are so high, to make a go of it if all you can keep is $8,000, right? Like how do you do the ongoing home expenses? It's something to really consider and consider with an elder care attorney about whether that option is right for you. And then additionally, there's veterans benefits under the aid and attendance program, and there are specific requirements for that you need to have served 90 days, at least one of which during active wartime, can have been dishonorably discharged, and must have served during a relevant wartime period. We have lots of information about veterans benefits on our website. And there are some great resources in our county as well. For Delaware County folks, there is a veterans benefits office at the courthouse in the annex that does provide guidance to folks who might be interested in learning more about veterans benefits. But the aid and attendance benefit, the way that works is it gives you a cash stipend that you can then use provided you meet the asset tests. And there are very specific rules, just like there are with Medicaid, in terms of how much assets you can have, whether you have given anything away. There's a 3-year look back. The rules are quite technical for both Medicaid and VA programs. But if you do want to explore those, the best way to do that is really through having a consultation with an attorney that specializes in that area. There's a lot of information out on the internet, but it can be kind of confusing and it's hard to know what applies to you. So part of our work is that we do 1-hour consultation appointments for a fee, but it is a working appointment where we can go through looking at your estate planning documents, your financial statements, and figure out whether these programs are a fit and how you can qualify for them. I know, Allie, that usually prompts some questions. Do we get anything from that?
Nothing at this point.
Excellent. All right, then we'll move on. Hopefully everybody's still awake and munching on a sandwich. It is the lunch hour. All right. Independent living. So this would be a residential community for people who want social engagement. So you're not just going to stay at home, that you want to be out and have community. And when I think about clients who say that they want to stay at home no matter what, I always pause on this idea of social engagement. It's one of those things that I don't think people give enough thought to when they decide that they're going to stay home no matter what. There's lots of research that really, was before the pandemic and then came out after the pandemic that highlighted how much having those interpersonal connections with people in person, being able to give somebody a hug, being able to sit down with someone for a cup of coffee, how much that really contributes to your overall sense of well-being. And if we're talking about aging successfully, well-being matters, right? These points of connection matter. So independent living gives you that opportunity to have connection, but at the same time, have your own space, have your own apartment or, a little cottage, depending on, the type of community that you're in, and not have to worry about maintenance and things like that, and that there's activities and all kinds of things going on within the context of the community so that you can sort of have your space, but have these opportunities for connection and engagement that are vital to our health and mental well-being, right? So I really like independent living communities. And you can get help with all kinds of stuff, even if you're independent, to stuff you don't feel like doing anymore. You know, maybe going to the dining room to have dinner every evening with friends, and they do housekeeping. They can provide transportation to doctor's appointments, things like this. So, if we're looking at a true standalone place, that can be anywhere from 2,500 a month to 5,000 a month. It's private pay, it's not covered by anything. And question I get a lot is, well, what about the over 55 community? That's kind of in its own category, right? Because although there might be a clubhouse or something, that there's not generally, daily meals or housekeeping. It's just a house in a community. There's really no services. So sometimes we have clients move to these communities and they're a little bit disappointed because what's in the brochure, people gathering around and doing things in the community room isn't really what happens. People tend to stay in their own homes and just relate to their families. So, living in an independent living community can sometimes be what the person is looking for. But it's not for everyone. Like I said at the beginning, you got to figure out what's right for you, visit places, ask great questions, and really be thoughtful about it. And, if needed, get assistance. From a lawyer, your financial advisor, to figure out, what's economically viable. So assisted living is an industry term and it's also a technical term. So in Pennsylvania, there are actually very few true assisted livings. Most people, when they say assisted living, they're using the industry term, which is basically something that moves along the continuum of care from independent living, where you need a little bit more help. In Pennsylvania, it's regulated separately from what people tend to go to, which are personal care homes. So most of what you see around us are personal care homes. Like Sunrise is a great example. That is a personal care home. But when clients come to see me, they'll say, we moved mom to assisted living. She's at Sunrise. So you think, well, like what is it? What does it matter? The idea is that for sort of true assisted living, it's designed to keep you there sort of for the rest of your days. It's generally private pay only. There's out in the western part of the state, they're trialing Medicaid, but here in Eastern Pennsylvania, we do not have that opportunity. It's all private pay. And generally the units are bigger in their design for you to, they have a way for you to cook and do things like that. So it's great for people who need moderate support and want to maintain some independence. And for the standalone ones that we have here, you need a lot of money, right? So because they're agreeing to take care of you for the rest of your days there before they let you come in, you need to show that you're relatively healthy, right? Or that if you're not, that you have lots of money to support your care through the stay in the program, and that you're not going to give any of your assets away, that instead you're going to give your assets to the community to take care of you. And I'll go into personal care homes and then next, and then we're going to look at this chart in terms of the key differences. So personal care homes, like I said, are the ones that we typically see that people need supervision, assistance, and limited support with the activities of daily living, that bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, transferring, that they don't need ongoing skilled nursing or medical care. So it could be somebody with an early dementia diagnosis who needs cueing, right? Needs reminders. Hey, it's time to go get dressed. But if you lay out the clothes, they can actually, dress themselves. Or, hey, it's time to get a shower, and then they can go in and do what they need to do, right? So those people within that situation were worried not so much about their physical ability to do things for themselves, but the idea that because they don't remember what's going on, that they can't be left alone safely, right? Because they wouldn't understand how to, get out of the house if there was a fire, could do, really need a lot of um, oversight to make sure that they're safe, right? So that always presents a problem for families because it's the idea of somebody who can still do for themselves physically, but mentally we can really appreciate that there's a need for significant support. And in the early points of a dementia diagnosis, where somebody can still relate to other people, handle their ADLs, but maybe not be able to have good executive functioning to make decisions, appreciate safety, risks, and how to avoid risks. Personal care can be a really great solution for that and also provides that socialization and connection that's so important, that isn't just relying on the family to come in and be everything, right? To be the socialization, to be the ongoing supervisory support, to go to every doctor's appointment, to do, all the medication management, things like that. Personal care can be a really great way to alleviate the stress and burden on caregiving families. So what are the downsides? Well, the cost, right? So it's 4,000 to 7,000, and I put two plus signs there because I've had clients and families come to me that they're paying a lot more than that, maybe 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 a month, right, at some of these places, because the care needs have increased. And with the increased care needs, the facility is charging more money to care for their loved one. And it's private pay only. So even at, a burn rate, let's say of 4,000 a month, that's a lot of money for most families. So, most people, not everybody, but most people kind of get to a point where they're looking at public sources of funding, such as Medicaid, but that isn't available in a personal care setting or in assisted living here in our part of the county. So just some key differences that, again, personal care homes are not a medical setting. Um, Assisted living, there is some ability because they're designed to care for you for the rest of your days. They are by design to limit seniors sort of bouncing around. But again, you have to show up with lots of money to go in there. But when you have sort of complex medical needs or things like this, personal care is not going to be the setting for you. And as your needs increase, you're going to have to transfer, well, to where? To a nursing home. There's no Medicaid, and again, the rare waivers are not in this part of the county. And the ideal resident personal care is just like what I described for you. Somebody might be early dementia or just, needing, slowing down a little bit and just needs that support and supervision from the folks in the community uh, to replace, the often Herculean levels of support that are provided by family members. We're asked a lot about memory care, and it's a really fine line as to whether someone should go personal care or memory care. In our work, as a life care planning firm, we use elder care coordinators as part of our life care planning team, consisting of the attorney, a public benefits specialist, paralegal, an estate planning paralegal, this whole team that we surround clients with. Our elder care coordinators really inform us on, should somebody go to personal care or memory care, and why does it matter? When we have somebody who's maybe higher dementia but higher functioning, it might be best, but not always, to go to personal care first because they can still relate to other folks. When we go into memory care, it's usually people who are pretty compromised cognitively, but still able to handle some, if not all, of their activities of daily living, and that there's specialized training for the staff who know how to deal with the challenging behaviors that can arise with Alzheimer's and the dementing illnesses, and that they understand how to redirect, soothe, and help an older adult who has maybe moderate dementing illnesses to be able to stay out of the nursing home. Sometimes, memory care can be the last stop for somebody that they can be cared for until the end, until they, pass away from their disease. Our firm is a big supporter of the Alzheimer's Association. We're doing their walk on November 8th, and if you want to donate to our team, we'd love that. It's available through our website. But the idea is we see a lot of clients suffering from that disease, and a lot of us have personal connections to the disease. My mom passed away from Alzheimer's a few months ago. So, this is an area that's near and dear to my heart, and making sure that families get the support that they need, just particularly as they're trying to figure out where do I put my loved one with dementia is something that's really important to me to give support along with the team for those transitions. Skilled nursing facilities. This is what everybody's afraid of when clients tell me, I don't want to go to one of those places. What they mean is a nursing home, right? And I understand it, right? You go as a maybe younger person or a younger old person. My dad is 85 and he still thinks he's a younger old person, which I think is great. Aging is a state of mind, it's not a number. But you go to one of these places, and if you're, active, it really does feel incredibly depressing and not someplace you want to go. But I'm here to tell you, because I spend a lot of time visiting clients in those places, that there is still life to be lived once you've crossed the threshold of a nursing home, that it isn't all over for you and it's going to be miserable and the care is going to be bad if it's paid for by Medicaid. Those are all absolutely myths. And I understand that you might have direct experiences where you say, well, no, I went through that with my grandmother and I went through that with my mother, and no, it was awful. And maybe I don't want to say that it's not terrible, but I would say that if you can get the right support and advocacy and understand how to pick a good facility, you can have better outcomes. And importantly, you don't need to go broke paying for care at the nursing home. There are strategies that we can use to handle those typical costs of 11,000 to 14,000 a month and up. It's going up every year. It always has. There are strategies both proactively and reactively to handle those costs. A myth I hear a lot is it's too late. We don't have 5 years, or if they look at really old data, we don't have 3 years, which is the rule about 20 years ago, right? And that is simply untrue. Particularly for married couples, there is a lot we can do to preserve and protect assets for our spouse in the community. It is absolutely not a requirement that you spend everything at the nursing home to qualify for Medicaid. Again, we can be reactive, we can be proactive. What do we pick? Depends on the plan of care and the assets. This is not cookie cutter stuff. When we're working with clients to develop a life care plan, it really is tailored exactly to the assets that you have. Not what your neighbor has, not what your great Aunt Sally had when she went into the nursing home 15 years ago and you lost everything, right? These stories that people have are important, but I always invite people to be curious about, did it have to be that way? Are there other options? Are there professionals perhaps that I can talk to about whether that's going to be my fate too? And so I would invite you to have that curiosity. So many people spend lots of money that they didn't need to spend because they thought that all hope was lost and they just needed to write these checks, 14,000 a month, over and over and over again, and go through a lot of money that maybe didn't need to be spent. It's always worth finding out if you have other options. And I'm saying that not to just the 29 people who are on this call, but if you go out into the world and you run into somebody who's confides in you, maybe that they just had to put their mother into a nursing home and they're going to lose everything. I hope that I at least give you some information today that you can say, well, perhaps you should talk to an elder care attorney because I went to a presentation and she said that that might not be the case and that there's always something that we can do to plan. Okay. And that's the reason we do these webinars, right? So it's, I'm not here to sell anybody anything. I had somebody tell me yesterday when I gave a talk, like, that was at the end of your sales pitch? And the answer is, well, yes, I was done speaking, but we're not here to, our firm really has a mission to care for families that are on that continuum of care and to provide as much education as we can so that families make the best decisions. Even if they never hire a lawyer, at least they have good information and don't do things based on fear, which is a big one. Inertia, right? Leaving home is too hard, so I'm not going to do it. Or misinformation, right? Oh, it's too late for me. It is never too late to plan. There's always the opportunity to get some good advice about your particular situation and to not make drastic moves until and unless you've gotten that professional guidance that's tailored to you. So that means don't go out and buy a new car because you read on the internet you can buy a new car. Don't go out and add your kid to your deed because you feel like that's the right thing to do. Get the advice so that you don't make decisions that could ultimately limit the amount of benefit that you could receive from a properly structured plan. So I want to move into continuing care retirement communities. These are great. So a lot of clients say to me, I am, 75, I can't get long-term care insurance. It's too late for me, or I looked into it 10 years ago and it's really very expensive. Well, a continuing care retirement community is a great way to sort of self-insure for long-term care costs. So you've probably, seen these out and about. Some ones near us are Maris Grove is the one that comes to mind. Lima Estates, Granite Farms Estates. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that one. Both my kids work there as servers. Places like that where you go in, you give them an entrance fee. Wesley Enhanced Living, where I was yesterday, another great community in our area. We're very lucky in Delaware County. We've got a lot of great CCRCs for you to explore and see if they're right for you. So many, and again, part of our work when we work with families is to help you identify the right ones and navigate their very dense contracts and things like that. But the idea is you're going to go in, you're going to have a buy-in. You need to be healthy and wealthy for a CCRC for the most part. And as I noted at the beginning of the presentation, what we find is a lot of times people wait until their health isn't so great. And that can make it hard to enter into a CCRC because, and get a life care contract where they're going to take care of you for the rest of your days, depending on the contract for a fee. So when we're thinking about any of these transitions, you kind of have to do it, it's counterintuitive, before you're ready, right? Because at the time you're ready, you might have missed the window to be able to go into, the continuing care community or a lesser restrictive type of care. If the goal is to stay out of the nursing home, well, that doesn't necessarily happen if you have some health issues, if you have sort of a foot on the continuum of care due to some chronic health conditions, right? If you want to stay out of the nursing home, you got to do some planning. You got to give it some thought. There are, so this is like a self-insured type of thing, meaning you're using your own money to buy in. You'll keep your own insurance, and not to confuse concept. You'll still be with your Medicare, A, B, Medigap, prescription drug. You're going to keep all that in place, but the idea is you're self-insuring for long-term care costs along the continuum of care. There are different contracts under the continuing care regulations, um, and they can be really gnarly to navigate on your own. We spend a lot of time with clients combing through their contracts, helping you ask the right questions of the community. We interface with the business office looking at contracts, addendums, addendums to addendums, sometimes addendums to addendums to addendums. You get the idea that this stuff is really complicated. And you're when we look at the entrance fee, right? 100,000 to 1 million plus, you want to make sure you understand that contract or have somebody help you with the contract before you sign on that line. It's a big investment, right? And then there's ongoing monthly fees as well. So these might not be for everyone. Some people don't want to pay a big upfront cost, right? They want to stay home and then move to personal care, right? Where they're paying like a monthly fee every month. That's fine too. The idea is this isn't one size fits all, as I've said a couple of times now. But if you know the options that are available to you, you can start checking them out and making a plan for, how you're going to transition to one of these communities. But, generally speaking, I really like the continuing care option, but it's not for everyone. I was in an elevator once going down to give a talk to a group of residents at a CCRC, and one of the residents turned to me and said, "Congregate living ain't for everyone." And that always stayed with me, right? That the idea of if you're not the type of person that wants a lot of people around, it might not be for you. I had one client, move in and then move out because they found that just being in an apartment style setting was not a good fit for them. They had come from someplace where there was a lot of land. They had their own home. They liked their privacy. So these are things you want to figure out before you move in. And again, part of our work as a life care planning firm is that we can help you figure out, help you navigate all this stuff and give you the support you need to get unstuck, right? So let's go into a little bit about private pay versus Medicaid and Medicare. Um, One of the interesting things is the way the programs are named, right? Medicaid and Medicare, people, even lawyers, mess them up all the time or misspeak and use one when they mean the other. Medicare is the entitlement program. You worked for it, you paid in for it, you get it when you turn 65. There's part A, there's part for your hospitals, part B for your doctors. You can purchase a supplemental plan for everything else that's not covered. Importantly, it does not cover long-term custodial care in a nursing home. And that sometimes can come as a shock to people, right? They might have to go into a nursing home and not be able to return home after a rehabilitation stay, for example. So you go into the hospital, you have your 3 overnights, which allows you to then transition into a rehabilitation facility and have Medicare pick up the tab for up to 100 days. And I always emphasize the up to because sometimes a big myth is I get 100 days. And the answer is no. Medicare decides when your time is up, and there's opportunities for advocacy and appeals if you disagree. I won't get into that right now, but the idea is to understand that when that care is exhausted, when those days are exhausted, what do you do? You're back in private pay, right? And we looked at those costs a few minutes ago. That's 11, 12, 13, $14,000 a month. So that's where Medicaid comes in, right? So Medicaid is actually, it's a poverty program, covers lots of things, right? So you probably heard a lot about Medicaid recently with the passage of that big piece of legislation that was requiring now people who are getting Medicaid under state expansion that now have to prove that they're working to get their health care coverage, right? The type of Medicaid that I operate in is the Medicaid long-term care benefit and the home and community-based waiver benefit. But for both of those, there are poverty requirements and strict asset limits. And there's strict asset limits for everything. But for right now, those two types of care that take care of older adults, um, are operating. Now, I do have a lot of clients who are fearful of that going away, but know that the long-term care benefit care in a nursing home is enshrined in the original 1965 law as amended, and that would take a lot to undo that in any way, shape, or form. So that's going to continue on. The waiver programs are sort of just like they say, it's a waiver from the requirement that someone who needs long-term care because they need a lot of help with their activities of daily living need to go to a nursing home to get that care paid for by Medicaid. The idea is we want a waiver from that requirement to allow people with that level of health acuity to stay at home, right? So that's what the waiver stands for. Right now, there was a little worry about those, but so far, we were able to still get clients on those. And I wanted to just address that because I know people are worried about those programs going away. The qualification for either of them is incredibly technical, and there's lots of opportunities for missteps if you don't get professional guidance. And I know you might think, well, easy for you to say you provide that professional guidance. And again, I'm not here to sell you anything. If you're thinking about getting somebody on Medicaid to pay for long-term care, don't Google, don't chat GPT, don't whatever the heck I'll don't. I had a client actually take out her phone in the middle of meeting with me and ask the phone the question. That was a first. But I do understand and I am aware that I am competing with the chat bots, right? I'm competing with computers and for a long time Google. And for right now, the information that you can get from somebody who sits down with you, looks over what you have, right? And isn't just aggregating a bunch of answers from the internet and serving it up to you in a way that sounds like it must be right, right? There's no replacement for professional guidance based on an analysis of your precise situation. It just doesn't exist yet. I get it, where everyone says the computers are getting smarter every day. They sure are, but there's no replacement for still getting professional guidance. And we see that even in other contexts like estate planning, right? For years, you've been able to go on to say LegalZoom or NOLO. There's a bunch of them, or you need a will cheapandfast.com, right? And you can go in and enter in all your information and press print and have a document spit out that says will of your name here at the top. And those documents are usually a mess. That's why lawyers don't tend to get too upset about them because we have to fix them all the time. Or worst case scenario, we have to go to court and ask the judge to figure out what it was that you meant when you logged on to I need a will cheapandfast.com at 2 a.m., 10 years ago. So technology is never a replacement for sitting down with somebody to figure out what's right for you and to help you maybe calm some anxiety, because I think for me that's the thing I see people do all the time. They get anxious, they get fearful, and understandably so, and then they don't make great decisions. They assume wrongly most of the time that there's nothing to be done and all hope is lost, and that simply isn't the case. You can qualify for Medicaid, even at the very last minute, but not without somebody guiding you through all the technical aspects of that qualification process. So, how do you figure out where you go? It's there's a few things to figure out. What do you need today and what's anticipated tomorrow? So, thinking about if you have any diagnoses, right? Is it something that's expected to get worse over time, like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, things like this? What do you think that's going to look like going forward? And how do you want to get ahead of that, right? Not waiting for that balloon to pop. right? No, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna stay at home until I can't walk anymore, which is something I've heard. A lot of that's not a great plan, right? That is not a great plan. If it's a lot of stress and strain on you, on your family caregivers, you really want to think about down the line how much care you're going to need, and who's going to do it, right? So going down to sort of support, I think it's really discounted in terms of the amount of stress and strain this puts on family caregivers. And I want to give sort of a shout out to our PA, Pennsylvania Department of Aging. They put together a lot of resources and muscle behind giving support to family caregivers. So if you want to Google something later, you want to look at the PA Care Toolkit for the Department of Aging. It will really help kind of connect you as a caregiver with resources and things that you should know about. And we also on our website have a lot of resources for family caregivers. But the idea is to be thoughtful and planful and to really understand your children's ability, not just willingness, but ability to care for you, right? So I'm in what's called the sandwich generation, which is we're raising kids and we also have aging parents and we also have our own full-time jobs, right? So there's a lot going on. So even though your adult child, or usually a daughter, but not always, has the willingness to help you, there's only so many hours in the day, right? So you've really got to be thoughtful about it and look at what resources and what supports are actually going to be able to help you should things with a condition uh, continue to progress. A lot of this stuff is not in our control, right? What diseases we get sometimes not in our control. The progression they take sometimes not in our control. So you want to be planful and handle those things that you can control, right? We can all hopefully control how much nutrition we get, hopefully, with the SNAP benefits going away, that's who knows. But the idea is, getting good exercise, good nutrition, good sleep, good hydration. As silly as it sounds, those four things right there can make the world of difference. And then number five, socialization. I said it a few times, I'll say it again. If you're having a crummy day, ask yourself, when was the last time I talked to somebody, right? When was the last time I had a healthy meal? When was the last time I got some fresh air? When was the last time I got a glass of water, right? How much sleep did I get last night? You got to look at those factors. They really do contribute to our overall sense of well-being. And then, when that again, that's really about, that's for me as the elder law, point of view on things. But really, I look at some of those sort of softer side issues. Clients sometimes think, well, you're an elder attorney. Shouldn't you just be talking to me about putting my stuff in a trust? I can talk to you about that, absolutely. But if we don't get where you want to age, how you want to age right, the asset planning isn't going to align with what you want to do to age successfully. So we absolutely have those conversations with clients every day about asset protection and using irrevocable trust, but it's not a cookie cutter, right? Just because, Sally down the street put her house in the trust doesn't mean that's right for you. You might have a different condition than she has. You might have different assets, family supports, family dynamics, right? All of this stuff is really goes into helping you integrate all of this into a plan for you so that you end up in the best place for you. Kind of covered some of this already, but again, my role is to coordinate the legal, financial, and care planning. So most people think, oh, just talk to me about finances. I can absolutely do that, happy to do that, but I'm going to do it in the context of your care plan, right? I'm not going to say just give your house to your kid because you want to, right? Keeping your house can sometimes be an important component to keeping you at home, keeping you at home or keeping you at home with supports, or when you sell your home, using that money to fund personal care or assisted living, right? So we're going to have those financial discussions, but it's going to be coordinated and contextual. I'm always going to be looking at your future or even present eligibility for the Medicaid program, right? That's all part of it and the asset protection options, but again, in service of your particular plan of care. One of the things that we're doing a lot now for clients is looking at CCRC, continuing care retirement community contracts for red flags or financial risk for the communities, right? You really do need to make sure that the community you select is financially viable and what happens if they're not anymore. It sounds like a trivial thing, but it really is very, very important. As I mentioned, we have social workers on the team, and we also partner with external social workers, external geriatric care management. So we provide, elder care coordination to help identify and support transitions to your desired community. But sometimes a little more elbow grease is required. Maybe there's some acute mental health issues going on or other acute issues that really are going to make up the day-to-day work until we can get that transition done, make that situation more stable so that we can then support a transition. So we sometimes have to use intensive case managers for clients, but all of it is with the goal of making sure that we can have a safe transition so that you can have, the best, next chapter of your life and giving you just basically the confidence and clarity that you need. We've looked at the dollars, we've seen a few slides now that have some pretty scary numbers on it. And I think that's what keeps people stuck, right? They don't want to spend the money. They're convinced that staying home is cheaper, right? Um, and when you think about, they say, well, I have a paid for house, so why should I move to a continuing care community? I paid for my house already. But the idea is, your house is never paid for. You know, Plumbing, HVAC, you name it, it can happen. You have the property taxes, insurance, maintenance, you name it. Your house is never fully paid for. Your house, living in your home, is never completely free. So if that's what's keeping you stuck, sometimes that can be a really false premise. When we look at all the costs there, you're probably coming close to what you would pay a community to move in as a resident on a monthly basis. That said, congregate living isn't for everyone. So navigating and figuring out what's right for you and giving you the support so that you can make that transition with confidence is really what we're all about here. And so we really want to make sure we're sharing some information with you that will debunk some of the myths that might keep you stuck when a transition, or at least starting to think about a transition, is in order. I'm going to stop here. Allie, do we have any questions from people? It's
Yep,
always hard
we have
to
a
talk into
couple.
a void.
The first question is about how the entrance fees get applied to the care. Is it only after your assets are depleted or if you change levels of care?
Great question. So the short answer is how your entrance fee is handled depends on the contract. So it does not get applied to your care, generally speaking, that they take in your entrance fee, and some communities it's refundable, some it's not. Um, when they start applying it to your care, it's generally you're at a community where the entrance fee is held on to. It doesn't amortize over time and go away. And that they will then, if you've otherwise run out of money, start pulling from the entrance fee. But they don't do that um, until and unless you run out of your other assets. And really, for them, they don't want to do that. They want to make sure before you come in that you pass financial underwriting, right, to be able to stay in the community for as long as possible. So that's kind of not really how it works. You do your entrance fee, you pay your monthly fee, and as you move along the community, that fee can go up, right? So your monthly rate for personal care is going to be a lot more than what's in your independent apartment, what's more in the nursing home, unless your contract says that it's the same all the way through. Not common, but that does happen. So all this is really sort of bottom line a function of what your contract says. And if you don't know, well, you can schedule a consultation, and we're happy to look at that with you so you fully understand. Because sometimes people sign on the line and they don't really understand what they did. That's okay. We're here to help you understand that.
The next question,
Yeah.
is the Medicare rating reliable and accessible to all?
The Medicare.gov rating for
Yeah, for
nursing
nursing homes. Yep.
for nursing homes, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid Services (CMS) has a tool called Nursing Home Compare, and absolutely, it's free tool online, and you can see lots of features about your nursing home. It's a 5-star rating system. And yeah, so you can just go on, pop on and see what's going on. You want to be mindful. I mean, uh, if there's been a recent event and otherwise facility that was doing great, could have a low rating. So not that you want to sort of take it with a grain of salt, but you might want to find out from somebody, beyond that, from an aging care professional. Um, I see this is the star rating of this particular facility on the nursing home compare. What do you think about it? And you still have to go in and take tours. Like, even if you can't just like when you're buying a car, just because it has a great rating in Consumer Reports or Edmunds or whatever, you still have to get in it and drive it and see if it's the right fit for you.
All right, that's all we have today. Thank you.
Excellent. And I finished with seconds to spare. So I want to just thank everyone for coming and listening to me for an hour. I hope that you came away with at least one or two kind of golden nuggets that you can think about, maybe pass along to others who might be contemplating transitions along the continuum of care. And know that we're here to help. We have lots of free resources on our website. That provide a lot of great content, and really encourage you to take a look at that.
Great. Thanks, Sherry. Yes, we do have the resources, and then our next webinar will be on November 20th. So just keep an eye out for that invitation in the next week as well, so you can register. Thanks again, everyone, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Bye-bye.